Daystar television network, a titan of global Christian broadcasting, finds itself rocked by an unprecedented internal revolt. At the eye of this gathering storm sits Joni Lamb, its leader, facing a tsunami of viewer fury that threatens the very pillars of the network built by her late husband, Marcus Lamb. This isn't just grumbling, it's a coordinated, vocal campaign spilling across YouTube comments, Facebook threads, and Twitter hashtags, with one resounding, persistent demand cutting through the digital noise: Joni must go. Speaking of support, if you're finding this deep dive into the Daystar situation revealing, show us some love. Hit that like button, subscribe to stay updated on developing stories like this, and jump into the comments section below. We genuinely want to hear where you stand on this complex issue. The discontent isn't merely about programming choices. It strikes at the perceived heart of Daystar's identity, accusing Lamb of betraying the foundational values of humility, service, and integrity that millions of faithful viewers believed the network embodied. What began as whispers of unease has erupted into a full-blown crisis of faith and leadership, shaking Daystar's stability and casting a long shadow over its future. The core accusation leveled by legions of disillusioned supporters is stark. Joni Lamb's leadership style and personal choices represent a fundamental clash with the Christian principles Daystar was founded to promote. Critics point to a perceived shift in focus, arguing that under her stewardship, the network's message has subtly drifted away from its core mission of ministry and service towards something more aligned with personal brand and prosperity. They see decisions, both on air and off, that seem to prioritize visibility, influence, and perhaps material comfort, starkly contrasting with the biblical ideals of servant leadership and sacrificial giving frequently preached from its own platforms. This perceived misalignment isn't viewed as a minor policy difference. For many longtime viewers, it feels like a betrayal of the covenant of trust they entered into with the network, a covenant they believed was unbreakable under Marcus Lamb's leadership. The sense of disillusionment is palpable and deeply personal for an audience that invested not just time, but often significant financial resources, believing in Daystar's divinely inspired purpose. Adding potent fuel to the fire is the widespread perception surrounding Joni Lamb's lifestyle, particularly concerning wealth and its display. Viewers, many living modestly themselves while faithfully contributing to the network, express deep discomfort and even anger at what they interpret as ostentation. Whether it's glimpses of residences, travel, or overall presentation, critics argue these elements project an image starkly at odds with the values of simplicity, modesty, and prioritizing spiritual wealth over material gain that they expect from their spiritual leaders. This perception creates a powerful and damaging narrative that the leader entrusted with a vast ministry platform is failing to practice what they preach. In the context of faith-based leadership, where moral authority is paramount, this perceived contradiction between word and deed is toxic. It erodes the essential bond of trust, making viewers question the sincerity behind every sermon broadcast and every donation appeal made. The question haunting many supporters is painfully direct. How can Daystar effectively minister about humility and service when its own leader appears, in their view, to embody different priorities? This dissonance strikes at the very credibility Daystar depends upon. The backlash isn't confined to online venting, it's manifesting in actions with potentially severe consequences for Daystar's operational survival. A significant and growing segment of the disaffected audience isn't just complaining, they're voting with their remotes and, crucially, their wallets. Many are actively boycotting Daystar broadcasts, switching off the channel they once considered essential viewing. This viewership decline directly impacts the network's reach and influence. However, the more immediate and existential threat comes from the organized withdrawal of financial support. Daystar, like most faith-based broadcasters, relies overwhelmingly on viewer donations to fund its massive global operations, satellite time, production costs, staff salaries, outreach programs. Disturbing reports are emerging of long-time financial partners, once steadfast in their monthly giving, explicitly stating they are halting contributions until there is a change in leadership. This collective action isn't just a symbolic protest, it threatens to trigger a severe financial crisis. A sustained drop in donations could force program cancellations, staff layoffs, reductions in international broadcasts, or even jeopardize the network's ability to keep its signals on the air. The viewers, feeling their trust has been broken, are now wielding their financial power as the ultimate lever for change, directly linking their giving to their confidence in the network's leadership and alignment with its stated mission. This financial pressure transforms the online criticism into a tangible, potentially crippling force. The damage inflicted by this controversy extends far beyond the balance sheet. It's a profound blow to Daystar's reputation and standing within the broader Christian community. Trust is the irreplaceable currency of any faith-based organization. Once eroded, it's incredibly difficult to restore. The very public nature of this crisis, amplified daily on social media, is severely tarnishing Daystar's image as a reliable beacon of Christian values. The scandal creates an aura of dysfunction and questionable leadership that other ministries and prominent Christian figures are keen to avoid. There are already murmurs and discreet confirmations that some long-standing partners, guest ministers, affiliated churches, collaborative ministries, are quietly distancing themselves from Daystar, wary of guilt by association. This isolation is dangerous. Losing credibility within the evangelical ecosystem weakens Daystar's influence, makes forming new partnerships difficult, and undermines its ability to effectively fulfill its mission. The network risks becoming a pariah, its programming viewed with skepticism rather than embraced as trustworthy spiritual nourishment. Rebuilding this shattered trust, should Daystar attempt it, would be a monumental task requiring radical transparency, genuine contrition, and demonstrable change, none of which are currently evident. Complicating the leadership crisis is a persistent and emotionally charged undercurrent, the succession question. Many within the Daystar community, particularly those deeply loyal to the legacy of founder Marcus Lamb, firmly believe leadership should have passed to his son, Jonathan Lamb, upon Marcus's passing. Supporters of Jonathan argue that he was being groomed for leadership, understood his father's original vision intimately, and embodies the core values, a focus on evangelism, ministry, and pastoral care, that defined Daystar's early, growth-focused years. They perceive Joni Lamb's assumption of the leadership mantle as a deviation from Marcus's presumed intentions, perhaps even an unwelcome consolidation of power. This narrative fuels significant resentment. Jonathan's supporters contend that his leadership would represent a return to roots, a restoration of the stability and trust that now seems so fragile. They see him as the rightful heir not just to a position, but to a spiritual legacy. This belief transforms the current dissatisfaction with Joni Lamb into a more specific rallying cry: Jonathan is the answer. It intensifies the divisions within the audience, creating factions and deepening the sense that the network has strayed from its God-ordained path under its current leadership. The succession debate adds a layer of dynastic tension and perceived betrayal that makes the current leadership crisis even more bitter and intractable. Further amplifying the calls for resignation is intense scrutiny focused squarely on Joni Lamb's personal life, particularly her marriage to Doug Weiss. Weiss, a counselor known for his ministry focused on sexual addiction and pornography, brings his own complex background and public profile to the union. Critics within the Daystar audience question whether this marriage aligns with the network's promoted values and the expectations placed upon its primary leader. They raise concerns about the optics and potential conflicts, wondering if Weiss's specific ministry focus and past are fully compatible with Daystar's broader family-oriented brand. More fundamentally, critics question whether Joni Lamb, through this personal choice, is setting an appropriate example for the vast audience that looks to Daystar for moral and spiritual guidance. The marriage becomes a focal point for broader anxieties about her judgment and adherence to the high ethical standards demanded of leaders in the religious spotlight. This intense personal scrutiny is emblematic of the reality facing leaders of major faith organizations. Their personal lives are inextricably linked to their public ministry. Every choice, particularly one as significant as marriage, is dissected through the lens of faith and perceived alignment with biblical principles. In this case, rather than bolstering her position, Lamb's personal decision has become another powerful argument used by critics to question her fitness to lead, further eroding her standing and adding momentum to the resignation demands. Daystar Television Network stands at a perilous crossroads, engulfed in a crisis entirely of its own making, born from a profound rupture in the sacred covenant of trust with its audience. The relentless campaign against Joni Lamb's leadership, fueled by perceived misalignment with core Christian values, discomfort with her lifestyle, anger over succession, and disapproval of personal choices, has morphed from online discontent into an existential threat. The viewer boycott and, critically, the withdrawal of financial donations are not merely protests. They are direct actions with the potential to cripple the network's operational capacity. Daystar's lifeblood is the faithful support of its viewers, and that support is hemorrhaging. Simultaneously, the network's hard-earned credibility, painstakingly built over decades, lies in tatters within the wider Christian community. The stain of scandal drives potential partners away and taints its broadcasts with suspicion. The unresolved succession question, simmering with emotion and a sense of dynastic betrayal, only deepens the internal fractures and complicates any potential path forward. Ignoring this perfect storm of discontent is not an option. The cost of inaction is simply too high, measured in lost dollars, lost viewers, and lost spiritual authority. The path to survival demands confronting the crisis head-on with unparalleled transparency and humility. This means directly addressing the specific, widespread concerns about leadership, values, and personal conduct without deflection or PR spin. It requires acknowledging the deep hurt and sense of betrayal felt by the audience and demonstrating a tangible, verifiable recommitment to the foundational principles of humility, service, and integrity upon which Marcus Lamb built the network. Whether this necessitates a leadership transition, perhaps involving Jonathan Lamb in a more significant role to heal the succession wounds, or a radical transformation in Joni Lamb's approach and public accountability, remains Daystar's agonizing decision. However, the critical lesson blazingly illuminated by this crisis transcends Daystar. For faith-based organizations, integrity isn't just an ideal, it's the absolute bedrock. Trust, once shattered, is agonizingly difficult to rebuild. Leaders walk a path of intense scrutiny. Their public ministry and private lives are inextricably linked in the eyes of their followers. Any perceived disconnect between preached values and lived reality is a fissure that can rapidly widen into a chasm. The coming weeks are pivotal. Will Daystar choose the difficult path of genuine accountability and radical change, or will it succumb to the mounting pressure, risking irreversible decline? The network's future hinges on recognizing that its true power never resided solely in its broadcast towers, but in the unwavering trust of the faithful, a trust now desperately needing restoration. This is a story with deep implications for faith, media, and leadership. What are your thoughts on Daystar's path forward? Share your perspective in the comments below, like this report if it provided clarity, and subscribe for continued coverage as this critical situation unfolds.